This meeting is being recorded.
Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus. And today, on the faces of Hercules, the many faces of Hercules on Sword and Sandal Cinema, we have the one, the only Brian Walker. Greetings and welcome, Brian. How are you?
I'm well tonight, Hercules. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm looking forward to learning all about Ed Fury today.
Oh, fantastic. You know what? His birthday, Ed Fury, the actor we're talking about tonight, was just last week. It was June 6th. And when I was thinking about topics for tonight's episode, I thought, gosh, we haven't really talked about him that much. And this is his month. This is June. We ought to devote, a whole episode to him. And that's what we're going to do tonight.
And I think that is phenomenal, and happy birthday wherever you are, Ed.
And that's another thing. I mean, there are lots of kind of miraculous things about Ed Fury, and one of them is that he is thankfully still with us. He turned 94 last week, and I mean that's a feat in and of itself. I've only known a couple of people in my life who have lived that long, and I'm not sure if it's a blessing or a curse, to tell you the truth. But it's an amazing feat, with all the diseases and things that try to kill you along the way. I think I'm 56 years old, and I'm kind of patting myself on the back for making it this far. But with Ed Fury, I mean, 94, that's amazing. And people who live that long, I know some of it's happenstance, but a lot of it's got to be the way you treat your body. Do you agree with me on that?
I agree with you 100%. The people that I know that are very long-lived, they live lives where they didn't drink over much, they didn't smoke at all, or did not smoke over much, and they pretty much were health conscious the entire way, exercising, trying to eat right, although what that meant often changes as we progress through our years, and our society tells us different things.
That's an interesting thing you bring up, and I don't want to go too far afield. But on YouTube, when I'm on the treadmill, I've been watching these old episodes of a Julia Child PBS show that she did with Jacques Pepin. And she's about 90 years old in these shows. And she's obviously elderly, but still, she knows exactly what she's doing. She can still chop with the best of them, so she still has control of her. She still has eye-hand coordination, although he does a lot of the cooking, but she does some of it too. And she has certain things to say about what were then 20 some years ago, what were then dietary trends, such as cutting the fat out of your diet, which she's just abhorrent about it. She's what are these people thinking? That's not the problem. And she kept saying that the problem was carbohydrates in this one episode. And as it turns out, she was right, and she lived to be 92 years old and had been a really heavy smoker until she was in her late 50s. She developed breast cancer and quit smoking on the advice of her doctor, and lived. And there again, a cancer survivor who lives, almost 40 years. I mean, that's amazing, especially for back then in the 60s when that stuff was. So I think there's something to say about what you put in your mouth, the food that you eat. I think that has a lot to do typically with one's longevity. And that means that, I think Ed's taking care of himself. And if you go back, it is kind of hard. Interestingly, if you look at his filmography, and he does appear to have been a busy actor for about 20 years or so, but he actually pops up here, there, and everywhere. And on YouTube, for example, I found an episode of a Bert Convy game show from the late 80s that features Ed Fury and Richard Harrison together.
Oh, wow.
And there's a panel of celebrities that are trying to guess who these two people are. And they fail miserably, although Lynn Redgrave, one of the celebrities, said she recognized one of them and had to recuse herself from the game. She didn't, and we never got around to, well, which one? Who did you know? And that was my question immediately. It's like, well, do you know Richard Harrison or or Ed Fury, or did you work with one of them? I mean, and Richard Harrison, I mean, he did make a ton of films. It could have been him. Who knows? But anyway, in this episode of this game show, Ed Fury would have been 60 or so, and Richard Harrison would have been mid 50s, 54, 55. They both look fantastic, but Ed Fury could be 45 here. I mean, he does not look 60 years old. I mean, it's kind of almost breathtaking to look at him and say, this is a 60-year-old man, because he just looks, I mean, you can't see his body so much. He's in a suit. It's just his face. I mean, he looks, like I said, about 45. And there again, I think some of that is heredity. And when if you're pretty when you're young and you halfway take care of yourself, you're going to be better looking as an older person, I think.
I agree.
Ugly young people don't make pretty old people. Well, they really don't. And that's kind of getting to what I wanted to talk about tonight with Ed Fury. Out of all the sword and sandal actors, and I was going through my website the other day, and checking on the renovations I've been making and how long that's taking, but I'm still working on it. I got 3 new pages up today.
All right.
But I was going through it and I was thinking the Hercules pages, and these are all male archetypes when you look at these people physically. I mean, Steve Reed's, was there ever anybody better looking? Was there ever any a hotter man? Who knows? Maybe not. But when I was looking through the pictures, I was thinking, gosh, if I could look like one of these people, from the neck down, if I could have the body of one of these people, I kind of came to the conclusion that it would have either been Ed Fury or Richard Harrison. I didn't pick Lou Ferrigno, who's this giant, a huge guy. I mean, he's like 6'5", and he's giant shoulders. I mean, enormous guy. Now, when I was 20, I might have wanted to be like that. But as a man in his middle years, I think it would either have been one of those two, either Richard Harrison or Ed Fury. And interestingly, they both did a lot of work in the 50s as physique models. I mean, they were photographed by Bob Miser, who is now very well known as a male physique photographer from the 50s. Not so well known in the 50s, but now very well respected, and the photographs, and they're all over the internet to see, but the photographs of both of them they're beautifully shot. Most of them are photographed out in nature, out at the beach or in the desert, in the Southern California area. Everything was picturesque, once upon a time before it all caught on fire out there. But beautiful outdoor locations, and perfect specimens to take pictures of. They're wonderful photos, and looking back on it, like I said, at this age, that's what I would want to look like now.
Have you ever pursued that path? I'm on that path much of the time, and it takes up a lot of time. But it's very satisfying.
Well, you know what? I've got about another year of doing what I'm doing now. Something which I like, but I feel it's getting time to move on. And one of my fantasies about all the retirement is having enough time to spend to shed about 25 or 30 pounds and get into shape. So yeah, I actually have thought about that, and I'll see older men, my age and older, who are clearly taking care of themselves. They're clearly spending a lot of time at the gym and such, and I do look at them and envy them and think, gosh, I know what they've been through in terms of the years, and they look fantastic. So who knows? I do exercise regularly now, though.
Mhm.
And I try to do exercising that is not going to harm me physically. So I'm on the treadmill a lot. And I can tell, when I started doing it years ago, my endurance, my stamina is much better. It's not really, I'm not knocking off any weight, obviously. But that's okay because I feel healthy. I take no prescription medication. My blood work is always a big thumbs up. I have no cholesterol problems. My blood pressure's good. So, I mean, I'm grateful for all of that. Thank God for the genes that I got on my dad's side of the family. So I got the worst of both parents physically, but at least I got that.
Yeah, with me, I developed type 2 diabetes, so that complicates. That's like throwing a wrench into a washing machine or dryer. It just kind of clanks everything around. But it's just everybody has some challenges someplace. So mine happened to be there, and I
Mine are just
enjoyed.
mental.
I took a week off from working out, and because you need a bit from anything, whatever you do, you need some time off. So now I'm looking forward to starting again. So I probably will by the weekend.
That's true. It is a good idea to just step back from your routine for a couple of days and, for lack of a better word, kind of recharge and refocus. Really, when you are doing the workaday grind, you lose sight sometimes of what's really important. At least I think so. And you got to take off some time just to. I was more guilty of this when I was younger than I am now, but not every moment has to be spent doing something productive. And it's a lesson that took me a long time to learn. But it is okay to just sort of switch off.
Yeah, it is.
and take a break and sort of mentally nap. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And that's one thing I love about films. No matter what kind of mood I'm in, if I sit down and watch a movie, it could be something that I've watched 10 times over, or it could be something that I haven't seen before. It's better than drugs. You just immediately relax and unwind. It's just in a matter of seconds, really.
I do that with the Peplum movies, the Sword and Sandal films.
Do they
I've
hype
seen
me
them.
up typically?
Yeah, they hike me up. They motivate me to work out. And some, like Hercules, is like, for instance, Nigel Green. He's not really a bodybuilder, and he doesn't have an impressive physique, but he's Hercules on attitude alone. So that's an important lesson.
Well, I see that on the internet some, and yes, he's not Steve Reeves. I will
Right.
give you that. But for a man of his age, he's not in bad shape.
No, he's not in bad shape, but he's not a bodybuilder or a muscle guy.
You are right. He's not working out, but on the other hand, he looks just healthy and normal.
Right. He does, but his attitude is such that he conveys very powerfully that he's Hercules, and he accomplished that. So that's a lesson in and of itself. That it's not exercise alone. It's something in your attitude, in your presentation. It's like with Sergio Chiani, or Alan Steele, as he's better known. He's not the most well built of the Hercules. He is built, and he does lift weights, but his physique is not like the other ones, but he accomplishes it on joy of life, or I don't know what to call what he radiates, but he radiates some lightness that is legendary, and it kind of surpasses everything and puts him in the Olympian mold. So a lot of times it's the qualities that they embody besides a muscular physique that really convey the role.
You're right about Alan Steele or Sergio Chiani. He seems to be thrilled to be there. You know,
Yeah,
he seems very happy. He's like, "Yay, I'm a movie star," and he's eating it up. Well, I like that. You know, I'd probably do the exact same thing. I would just be, "Oh wow," you know. That's kind of what I get out of his films. I mean, he's just really happy to be there.
really happy to be there. Yeah, and we should
Trying,
all be
trying,
that happy to be where we are. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
that's something that translates into something useful to have in life. If you're happy that you're there, it's like, hey, I'm here and I'm happy. That is a phenomenal thing, and I learned that from Alan Steele.
Well, and you know, there's some actors, particularly male ones, whose performances kind of border on boredom.
Hmm.
I probably shouldn't mention it. I probably shouldn't mention any names, Kevin Costner. I'm looking at you. You know, but they're not very energetic performances. I really shouldn't say that they're bad, but they are. But and with something like that, you know, the smile on his face and the joy in his eyes, I mean, it's almost infectious. You know, especially if you identify, you know, with the protagonist. It is kind of uplifting. I like that. I like an actor who I don't know how much training that he had as an actor, but I like to see that personality come through in the performance. I mean, it's not just as though he's portraying a part. He's given it something. He's putting all he's got behind it, and that's fantastic. I mean, that means that somebody's working hard. And you know, I've watched a lot of Ed Fury over the last few days, and he's a really good actor. You know, he's reading the scene really well, and some of those movies that he did had to have been difficult, to shoot, especially the peplums that he did, because you know a lot of those actors were from different countries.
Yes.
In the game show that I mentioned with Ed Fury and Richard Harrison makes the comment that you would be on a set with people speaking 6 or 7 different languages, and you only know one of them. But he said that after a while, you kind of get into the groove of it, and you start picking up words in this language and words in that language, and he said it just somehow all came together. It just all worked. But that takes an intellect. That's not something anybody just gets used to. I mean, that's your paying attention. That's your wanting to do the best possible acting job that you're being paid for. And I see that a lot in Ed Fury's performances, and there's a lot of them to take a look at, really. The first time I ever saw him in anything, I think I was a teenager. There was an independent television station that I used to watch, and overnight they would run old situation comedies, and it would run into the morning. And I would have my TV on in the morning as I was getting ready for school. And I think these came on around 6 o'clock or so in the morning. The station would run a sitcom, an early 1950s sitcom called I Married Joan, with Joan Davis, who's profiled at the drive-in. And the show that would come on right after it was a show called My Little Margie with Gail Storm.
I remember I know a little Margie.
And that's also profiled. She's also profiled at the drive-in, and Ed Fury is featured prominently in one of the episodes as somebody named Hercules, interestingly enough. But he is a physique model, in the show, and that was the first time I can remember seeing him. And I was probably, I don't know, 16, 17, something like that. It was before I went to college. And like I said, that's the first thing I can remember seeing him in was a TV show from the 50s. If you look at his filmography, you'll see that he did a lot of television, perhaps more than most of the other Hercules actors, to tell you the truth, especially the ones of his day, of his vintage. And if you watch 1960s and 1970s cop shows, and I'm a huge fan, Greg and I have seen every episode of Columbo probably 10 times over, and McCloud and Cannon, which is a huge favorite of mine too. And Kojak, you will see Ed Fury pop up on all of them. And a lot of, if you look at IMDb's credits, it's not complete for him, not at all, because
No?
you see him pop up almost everywhere. Now he might not have any lines or anything like that, but he's a handsome guy. He's kind of hard to hide in a scene, and you just see him pop up.
Yeah, I'm on his filmography now. I see he was in Wild Women of Wongo. He was in Athena, which is the same film where Steve Reeves got his start. He was in Abbott and Costello Go to Mars. So he's been
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Yeah, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. I saw that.
That's my favorite Marilyn Monroe movie.
Oh, awesome.
It is.
Star Trek, Gilligan's Island.
He did a lot of television, and he was on Doris Day, the Doris Day show from the late 60s. Just sort of everything too, here, there, and everywhere. He actually kind of morphed into a kind of a character actor, really. And when you watch his performances, there's nothing wooden or stilted about them. He started out as a stage actor, so he had a lot of experience in front of live audiences, which is something that really lends itself to television production, being able to handle a lot of distraction while you're trying to do work, which I can't do, by the way. I have to have sort of a tunnel vision. But as an actor, you can't be that way. You have to do whatever you have to do with 50, 60 people standing around you, all of whom are probably making noise and doing something distracting. That's difficult, but as a stage actor, if you have that experience and if you have that focus on what you're doing, then you're going to be great in television, because it's the same thing, only worse with cameras.
Yeah, it had him in a lot of uncredited things where, as you pointed out, he was a guard or something else. So it lists his profession or just says uncredited in his appearances. But that's an amazing range of roles that he's assumed, and an amazing variety of genres he's appeared in. That's quite an accomplishment.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, I have a huge affinity for all of those old cop shows, and watched all of them as a kid. And sometimes if we're on antenna TV or something like that, we'll watch them again. Back in the old days, we even collected the DVDs of some of these.
Yeah, I have a lot of these. The ones that did, like Demetrius and the Gladiators.
Yes.
That comes out every Easter time in Walmart and Target and places like that. So I know I picked that up at least once or twice with different covers. And how is he best remembered? Like with some of those shows, they have active fandoms, like Star Trek and Gilligan's Island. So I imagine that they have conventions. They used to have Star Trek conventions. I used to go to those. Athena used to go to those too. I imagine there are Gilligan's Island conventions, and I imagine he's in demand in those shows that he appeared in as a guest.
I really don't know. There's not much available biographical information on him. He, in the late 1950s, married the sister of Dick Dubois, who was another physique model, bodybuilder. He married his sister, Marceline. And that's sort of where his biographical information is. Greg and I used to watch on the Game Show Network, and this is 20 some years ago. This is back when the Game Show Network was new. It was a show called All New, Three's a Crowd, and it was a copy of a game show from the late 70s. And it featured teams of 3 people, and there was the main person and then two people who had some sort of relation to him. It might have been like a work relationship or a familial or a friendly thing. And Ed Fury is on an episode of that with two young ladies. And he's clearly dated the two young ladies if you watch the episode. So I don't know if he's still married or not. Wikipedia says he is, and who knows? But there's not a whole lot of biographical information out there for him. And there again, that's
an interesting point, because Sergio Chiani, whose career I followed, he doesn't have much biographical information either. I have tons of books on Sword and Sandal cinema. The internet's here, and I frequently Google things that I've Googled a million times before. I found a astrology chart somebody did for him. I put that in the Sergio Chiani group on Facebook, but I could find very little biographical data, and it's very unfortunate. The week he died, someone on one of the Facebook groups said that he could connect me with him by email. So I was looking forward to that, and then the announcement came that he passed away on his birthday,
or I think a couple of days before, or something like that.
Yeah, around his birthday, yeah, his 80th, I believe it was. But yeah, a lot of them don't have much that's known about them, or what is known about them is the same stuff repeated over and over and over again, regardless of where you look. And it's not a lot of information. And these are colorful individuals who had presence, so you'd imagine that there'd be more on them in the media.
On the other hand, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, my personal life is private too.
Okay, good point.
I don't blame actors for wanting to protect their privacy. I really don't. I think it's got to be invasive, for some of these people. And you don't have to be a huge star to have your whole life laid in front of the tabloids. Amber Heard,
Yeah, gotcha.
But what a charming person too. Of course, I mean, I'm not saying that Johnny Depp's any better, but I got to tell you, I didn't know who she was until all of that unfolded. I had no idea, and I still don't really.
I knew who she was because she was in Aquaman #1, and Aquaman is both a superhero film and an Atlantis film, so of course I had to see it. So that's how I knew of her.
But I admire people for protecting their privacy. I mean, you go, and the less that you put out there regarding your personal affairs, I think the better. That's a huge issue with me and social media, and I guess it's not just Americans, but you see a lot of egotistical behavior on social media to the point where you just want to delete your account. And people put so much about themselves on display. I think it's refreshing when somebody has a little bit of mystery about them, quite honestly. And I would, I do the same thing with social media as people like Ed Fury have done, with fame and fortune. They don't put a lot of their personal business out there, and I agree with that. I that's so admirable. Thank you for not doing that. But your life is your life, and these days, people are, a lot. I hate to say it, but a lot of actors are just basically whores. Well, no, and I'm not going to name a name, but I follow a few of them on Facebook, and they post very mostly unclad pictures of themselves, which
Really?
I said mostly. They're males, so I mean it's easier to do. But gosh, you're putting everything out there. You know what I mean? There's no mystery to it at all, and I think there's a point where you can know too much about people. I think the tabloids have kind of ruined things for us. But and like I said though, there's just not a whole lot of biographical information about him, and I for one appreciate that, and I'm sure that was on purpose.
You might very well be right. Some
Well, you
people are
would
very
have to be.
people,
Yeah.
yeah.
Otherwise, if you wanted to be famous, yeah, you'd lay it all out there. At least what you would want other people to see. You know, if you'd been married like 18 times, then maybe you might not want people to know how unstable you are or how terrible you are with relationships. But
Very good points.
and some people thrive on it. You know, I mean, there are these Zsa Zsa Gabors out there who I've been married 4 times. You know, and just as an aside, years ago, I had an acquaintance who, at 29 years old, had been married 4 times. And she was not famous. She was just this person. But
How many times have you been married since then?
I have no idea, because if you're that big of a train wreck at 29, I don't want to see you at 59. I'm good. You go have your life. But I'm sure that there have been several more. I bet that person has racked up a few more.
Yeah, take a
I
minute
mean,
to social media. I put a lot of information out there, but much of the information has very little to do with me. As
no, I
a
mean, it's not, you know,
promoting
this is
things we're doing on social media. I have a lot of fun promoting, and it is a good way for keeping in touch with people you might not normally keep in touch with, because I get contacted by people from all areas of my life, you know, some parts that I don't even remember very well. But we live a lot of life as we move from birth to death, and occasionally you'll encounter it on social media.
true. And but you know what? You see memes, which were probably designed by people about my age, saying that, you know, in the 80s and 90s, all the stupid shit that we did, there's no record of. But oh, thank God there's not. I like being able to color my memories the way I want them to be, instead of actually seeing the horrible reality. You know,
Well, there are
I would,
entitled to.
well, I would much rather, do that. I'm so glad that was not a thing back then, and I would hate to be a kid now. All this surveillance, I would have withered. I would not have been. Well, I wasn't a happy child anyway, but I would have been a really miserable kid, you know, because there are cameras everywhere. I would have
Yes,
hated that. I loved being a sneaky little shit. Yeah, you know? I did. It was the thing that got me through childhood. You know,
I remember when I worked in Pennsylvania as a teacher, and I was teaching computer classes and showing people how to use social media. Back then it was MSN. There was a big thing, and they used to have MSN. You could make your own little website. So I used to show people how to make the
yeah.
websites. And I would show them. Back then you could tap into more things, like as a citizen, like cameras that are on street corners, and plans and at City Hall. And I would show people toward the end of the semester how the internet has granted people the power of supervillains, because you could surveil houses, you can watch people's coming and going, you can get a plan of their house, you can, you know, follow them to or from thing. Anybody could do it back then. And it was very frightening, because in movies prior to then, only supervillains had the capacity to do that with supercomputers, and now anybody with the PC has the same powers
Pretty
in their
much.
hand. Scary.
Greg is going to replace me for just a minute, but I will be right back.
Oh,
Okay.
Well, stepping in here, I don't know if I'm good at this or not.
You'll be great.
Where are we?
I am Hercules Invictus. This is Sword and
Oh,
Sandal
really?
Cinema, the many-faced
How about that?
Hercules, and you are Greg. So
And I am
here we
Greg.
are.
And I'm a big fan of all of this. But I don't look at it with the critical eye that some people do. But you know, I'm a big movie fan. I love film. It's my passion, I guess. So I just love, uh, and it's fun to look at all these different things, and
Mhm.
these the Peplum movies are a lot of fun. I think I enjoy them. And we've watched in the last few days. We've watched a lot of for this. We were looking at a lot of the Ed Fury things, and I found it amazing that I guess when he had his career over in Italy, and then when that ended, a lot of these people seemed to sort of drop off the, you didn't see them as often or anything. He kept the career going. I don't know. He was in so many different TV shows, and he's in a lot of the TV shows that I really like. So
Mhm.
it was fun. It was fun to go back then and research his filmography through looking at some of the clips and things, and then seeing how many of the shows that he happened to be on that I really, really liked. So, and that's my rambling. So, okay, I'm not a very good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You did great. We have to have you on more often.
Okay, I'll be happy to. I've got quite a mouth.
Oh, truer words have often been spoken. Anyway, regarding Ed Fury, the two movies that I posted for him this month, one was on his birthday, and the one today, I posted Wild Women of Wongo, which is
Mhm.
one of his early credited performances. And as Jack Randall Earls, my friend from Indianapolis, said, there's not enough Ed in this, and I would agree with that. Although these days he's featured, prominently, in the advertising for the movie. And it's a color independent feature from the 50s, shot in Coral Gables, Florida. And it's about this, depending on how you feel, maybe a utopian society of females who go out and recruit males for purpose of whatever you might imagine.
And a
And
little trivia piece that nobody has on the internet is the caveman language, or the primitive language you're speaking, is Greek. I don't remember
well,
what you said. It's been years since I saw Wild Women of Wongo. But I remember the first time I saw it, it's like they're speaking Greek. People told me it was gibberish they were speaking.
Oh God, and I didn't know that. So, but it's a fun movie if you watch it. I've got a really good DVD copy of it. The copy that's on archive.org has blown out color.
Hmm.
The old color stock was really unstable. Old plastics are unstable, to tell you the truth, and it was essentially a plastic. And the color bleed is pretty bad. It would be nice to see a restored version of it. And the other film that I ran this month in honor of Ed Fury was Colossus and the Amazon Queen, which is another comedy.
Yes.
It's a higher quality production than Wild Women of Wongo. In that his co-star is Rod Taylor, the Australian actor from The Birds, and a lot of other, The Time Machine. A lot of great. He was a good actor. A lot of great portrayals by him from the 60s, on through to around the time he died. He worked up to nearly the end. And it's a good movie, and it's also about a society of women who are stronger than men. So it's a curious theme, running through a couple of Ed Fury's movies, both made close to the same time, within a couple of years of each other.
Maybe he got one of the parts because he was in the other one. So it's like, oh, this guy gets it.
Well, so this guy's really passive. So no, I mean he's not, but it's interesting that a society of females would want a very handsome male, much as archetypally, in terms of archetypes, I guess I should say, a male-dominated society wants the most attractive of the females. So maybe that's where it comes from.
Well, there's the archetypal Amazons who did exist, you know, although for many years scholars insisted that they didn't. They've since found tombs and burial stuff in the tombs near the Soromance, which is where the Greeks placed them. And they and other matriarchal societies where the women were the warriors and the women were the priestcraft and the rulers, men were often considered, they were looked at for their beauty. And they did the chores that women are naturally assigned in patriarchal societies. So I didn't find it strange because, what would they need men for other than to take care of the household and to take care of them? So that's how I interpreted it when I saw these movies long ago.
Well, and I like role reversal films too. Especially during the time at which they were made. I'm hoping it did make people think a little bit, even if they didn't want to think about it, and you always hear, in these older films, they're very male dominated. If you look at filmographies of most types of films, from the earliest days of filmmaking to now, even, the casts are very, very male dominated. I mean, Westerns are, you can watch a Western where there are no credited female performers, and there were women in the Wild West because if there hadn't been, there wouldn't have been any men for me. You know what I mean? So where'd they all go? And like I said, all you have to do is look at those filmographies from those movies. They're just all male. There may have been some women in the background, but they didn't get credit. Or even in some of the better Westerns, there would be like a female lead who only her character only existed really to support the male lead's libido, to make him seem more of a man, somehow. I tell you, a lot of filmmakers have issues with women. Let me tell you, it's painfully obvious. You see it a lot in horror movies, but you also, and horror gets beaten up for it, and rightfully so. I mean, but there are other film genres that are worse. Westerns are worse, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm not a big Western fan. I used to watch them. I grew up with TV, so they used to play on TV a lot. But I never other than Mel Brooks's comedy Western, which I saw when it came out. I think that's the only Western that I actually went to see. All the others I caught on Channel 9 in New York City when they were on, and I was watching other things before or after.
My parents took me to see Blazing Saddles when I was about 7 or 8 years old at a drive-in. And I mean, gosh, that was close to 50 years ago. The humor is really bawdy and adult, well, and corny at the same time. It's Mel Brooks, who Mel Brooks is brilliant.
And now very inappropriate. I don't think they would
very old,
Yeah, I don't think they can make Blazing Saddles now.
Oh no, that no studio would give that a green light now. Oh. No, you couldn't raise $5 for that movie now. But back then, it flew. And as a child, I probably shouldn't have seen it, but I instantly loved it. Because a lot of the humor is, we'll say sophomore. How about that?
Yeah.
But a lot of it probably went over my 8-year-old head. I mean, I'm sure it did. I didn't get all of it, but I got enough of it to love it. I mean, instantly, I was just thrilled. It's just, this is a great movie. And then we went to see, Young Frankenstein, Silent Movie, which I thought Silent Movie doesn't get any respect, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's a brilliant movie. Maybe his best movie, Mel Brooks' best movie, maybe.
Yeah, I
I,
don't remember that one that clearly. I remember seeing it, but I don't remember too much about the movie.
oh, it's fantastic. And there again, went to see it at the theater when I was a kid. I loved at the time. I was a big silent movie. Well, I still am too. But at the time, I watched a lot of silent movies as much as I could. I was a big fan as a
I
child.
recently got for my birthday the Garmont collection, Volume 2. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I got it because it had on it the first cinematic appearance of Hercules, which was in 1910.
Oh, okay, okay.
It was an animated cartoon, not a very good one, but it was the first time Hercules was on film that anybody knows about. So I watched that several dozen times since my birthday.
Well, when I
And
was a kid, when I was a kid, and there again, this is roughly around all of the same era. There was a pizza place that my parents would take me to, and we didn't go every week, unfortunately, but we went for special occasions or whatnot. And it turned out to be a Shakey's, but I didn't know that's what it was, when I was a kid. And Shakey's pizza parlors, some of them used to. This is in the days before VCRs. Would have a series of 16 millimeter projectors in the seating area in the restaurant, and on the walls they would show old silent films like Buster Keaton, the Keystone Cops, Charlie Chaplin, Harry Langdon, Laurel and Hardy, W.C. Fields, and I can still remember the way the pizza smelled
oh
at
wow.
Shakey's. I can't remember what it tasted like, but I can still remember the smell. And I was just mesmerized by it. Was very dark, dimly lit, so you could see the images on the walls, and I was just transfixed. I loved that place, and that's kind of what kicked off my love of silent movies. And there were some of the independent television stations would run a block of. I think it was a syndication package, but they would run a block of silent films with musical score, that didn't necessarily go with the action.
No, we used to have those on Channel 13, which was our PBS, and then we had the UHF
right.
Stations that were the channels that were like really local, and they occasionally had channels that would show like really old movies as well, and that's where I used to watch them. And we had in different stores when I was growing up, they had those viewers that you looked in and then you cranked a handle, and
yes,
they'd flip card. You'd watch a short film. Those are very much part of my childhood. Also, they were everywhere.
Those mutascopes.
Yes.
At first, filmmakers were required to document every frame of a film. They were required to have it photographed and printed, and that's where mutascopes come from. They were only required to do that for a few years, but that also preserved those movies. And when that ceased being law, we lost so many films. Of the silent movies, unfortunately, very few of them exist. It's such a shame. People who were huge stars of their era, like Theda Bara, who was the vamp, in some movies that were made more than 100 years ago, and kind of early media sensations. She was an early media sensation. There was a lot of mystique about her, even though she was a girl from Cincinnati, but the studio made her out to sound like she was direct from Egypt. There was such a there was some magic about it, and we just films just don't have that now, and these actors don't have that. But back then, you could manufacture that magic, I guess I should say. And there's something just fantastic about it. But with Theda Bara, very, very little of what she did exists.
That's unfortunate.
I'm not sure I'm not sure there's a complete film. I think there's some fragments, but I don't think there's a complete film of hers that exists.
Well, I'm glad that whatever still exists, still exists. I never thought I'd see this 1910 Hercules. I'd heard of it for a very long time. I heard references to it. Nobody knew where to get one. And again, I type in things randomly in the computer that are still floating around in my consciousness. And then I saw it listed in a collection. So first I got it from my library, and my library had it. So I got to watch it. And then I quested for one. They were very pricey. So I watched it until one got where I thought it was a good price to pay for it. And then it was around the time of my birthday. My wife said, I'll get it for you. So I wound up getting this thing, but I never thought I'd see it. I thought 1910, animation, it's nowhere to be found, because some movies that were made in the 30s and the 40s, I couldn't find anywhere.
Yeah.
I finally found Cabiria, so that I have.
Mm-hmm.
But there were other like epics, like historical epics and biblical epics that are the period that I like watching movies about, and those haven't crossed my path yet. And as we both discovered, neither of us owns a copy of Hercules Against Rome with Sergio Chiani.
No.
I thought I had that. I would have sworn I had it. I would have bet money that I had it, but I have that nowhere.
My physical collection of films, I guess I should say, my accumulation of it has dwindled significantly over the years. And it was almost a hobby once upon a time, that to go out on a weekend and try to find as many obscure films as I could. That's getting harder and harder to do at this point, for me, since I do have a pretty big physical library. But yeah, I'm always amazed at the things that I don't have in my library that I thought I did, or I wish I did.
And some things never made it past VHS. There are tons of films I can think of that I used to enjoy on VHS, and they got destroyed over the years, and I've looked to replace them on DVD or Blu-ray. I don't have 4K yet, but they've never come out anywhere.
I know I've said this before, but forget 4K. My eyes can't see it anyway. So what's the point? You know what I mean? There are more pixels. Well, shit, I can't see the ones that are there now.
No. And when the new system comes out and they show you what it looks like on the old system, it's like, if they could do this on the old system to show me what the new system looks like, why didn't they do this with the old system? It's like when DVD was coming out, and they would show you the difference on the picture of VHS and DVD, but they'd show it to you on VHS. So VHS was capable of those pictures. DVD was capable of the pictures of Blu-ray, but they chose not to make things that vividly or that clearly. So,
well, you remember with VHS, it was all about the speed with which the film was transferred to video. If it was done slowly, that's when you did get a really sharp, crisp picture with beautiful color. If it was being cranked out, like one every 10 seconds, the picture quality was degraded. It wasn't as good. And remember, early on, videotapes were expensive.
yes.
Back in the early 80s, they were like $10 a piece, essentially. So if you were going to record something, you probably recorded it on 6 hour, because you could put 3 or 4 movies, on a videotape as opposed to just one. However, if you used a 2 hour setting, the picture quality was far, far better, and nobody used 4 4-hour unless they had a movie to copy that was more than 2 hours long. So yeah, you see a lot of films on YouTube that have clearly been curated by somebody over the course of 30 or 40 years who lovingly spent $10 on a video cassette to record a 2-hour program of some sort.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of Commander USA, which was on the USA Network in the mid '80s. It was a brilliant show done for peanuts, and featured a lot of B movies. And Commander USA, sadly, the actor who portrayed him passed away a few years ago, and I think I mentioned him before
Yes.
in our discussions. But go check him out on YouTube. He's a riot, and they picked great movies to show. A lot of grindhouse horror, slasher movies. There's some Hercules stuff. There's a lot of Toho Japanese. He did a little bit of everything and did it brilliantly and with a lot of great humor, but love at the same time. He's not making fun of this stuff. He's having a good time with it. He's enjoying it.
Maybe there'll be a son of Commander USA to continue.
Well, I wish, but whomever owns Commander USA has not trotted out any of this, and it's just all posted on YouTube by people my age who made these recordings back in the 80s. And you can even see some of them on archive.org, which I'm sure that's got to be violated some sort of copyright, but I won't point fingers, but because I enjoy seeing them so much, and whoever owns the copyright doesn't seem to mind that stuff being out there.
Well,
I for one would put them out. I'd sell them to some sort of platform.
The copyright is different in different countries. Like Conan is finally in the public domain, and new Conan and Conan character comics are coming out, but they can't call it Conan. They can call him Conan inside the comic book, but they can't call him Conan on the cover of the comic because another company owns the rights to Conan like that. So they've been calling it the Cimmerian, and then some of the characters like Valerian Belit have come out in comics. So it's very interesting when something that was owned is no longer owned and is open to the creative endeavors of those who wish to create something new.
Well, you know what? And interestingly, on the same topic, Mickey Mouse is just about to lapse in the public domain.
Yes, I know. That'll be
interesting. Now it's the old Mickey Mouse who has the big round eyes with with the Art Deco slits. Actually, the Mickey Mouse that I love, to tell you the truth, the best. I like that characterization.
Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse.
Yes, and that's about to go into public domain. It'll be just a few years, hopefully during my lifetime. But just
that'll be interesting.
I think 2 years. I think that's when it.
Because some of the Marvel characters going into the public domain as well.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to that because I want to see what happens. When that image lapses in the public domain, anybody can use it. Not that people haven't been using it already, but anybody can use it, and they can do whatever they want to with it. And I don't know what a huge media company like Disney that owns about a quarter of what we watch. Anything that you see on cable, has like a 1 in 4 chance of being owned by Disney, which makes it scary. But and then the theme parks and all that stuff, ESPN, ABC.
We'll cover that adventure as it unfolds. Now, we're running out of time, and you have a very interesting Thursday planned for us with retro sci-fi and horror cinema. So would you care to share a little bit about that topic?
I sure would. It's summer, and we all think of the beach during the summer as this idyllic place to rest and unwind. And what better setting for a horror film when you turn that on its ear? When you turn that upside down, and you make that idyllic setting hell. When you make it terrifying, and you know. Jaws, speaking of summer blockbusters,
Yes.
which we got a few minutes ago, came out 47 years ago in 1975.
Wow.
I think my Jaws T-shirt, which was bought in 1975, is still at my mother's house, believe it or not. It's much smaller than the one I'm wearing now, obviously. But that was that's one of the earlier movies I can remember that had a lot of marketing
I
you know?
remember that movie when it came out, and I remember people stopped swimming. They'd go to the beach, but they wouldn't go in the water. And my response to the whole thing was to eat shark steaks. So it's like if the shark's gonna act me, I'm gonna eat the shark. So I used to cook shark steaks during the entire on my barbecue the entire time that Jaws was showing.
I don't know about where you were at the time, but the town in which I lived had just one theater that showed Jaws, and it was a one-screen theater because that was fairly common back then, and you had to buy tickets in advance, like days in advance. So if you wanted to see that movie, you had to buy tickets for whatever date that they had tickets for. And I mean, something like that would never happen now. But that movie that indicates how popular that movie was. And part of that's because of where I lived, because I lived in a smaller area, and you could only have like one at that time. You could only have one theater showing that movie in your town, or in a specific geographic location, I guess I should say.
I'm looking forward to exploring that. I have a lot of memories of beach terror. There was never made it
Horror
to
Party Beach. There's a lot of movies like that, and like I said, I enjoy that juxtaposition of something that's supposed to be heaven, which is really actually hell. I love that. I mean, that's the best kind of horror. When you have something that's supposed to be good and pure and fantastic and wonderful, and you make it hideous and ugly and terrifying. Oh, that's like a hug from Jesus.
I was watching your car and guarding you from dinosaurs.
Yes.
And on that note, which is the most interesting statement of the night, we'll end today's show. Thank you so very much, Brian. Thank you, Greg, for guest starring. I'm looking forward to Thursday's conversation. Are there any last words about Ed Fury you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Let's thank our lucky stars that he is still with us at age 94. I would imagine that he's taken very good care of himself to have lived such a long life, and I hope he's happy, healthy, and very well.
Ditto, I hope as well. And let's see
visit
on the show.
That would be nice if we could arrange something like that. In the meanwhile, please visit me at Brian's Drive-In Theater. That's Brian with an I, briansdrivein-theater.com. If you want to interact with me on social media, Facebook is the best place to do that. I do have a Twitter account, but I lurk on Twitter. I don't post anymore. So if you friend me on Twitter, or if you follow me on Twitter, you're probably not going to see any output from me. However, if you follow me on Facebook, you'll get to see the movie of the day. Every day at Brian's Drive-In Theater, there's a new movie of the day. Today's movie is Ed Fury's Wild Women of Wongo from 1958. A cute little comedy and in color, which is, well, unfortunately, the copy that I'm showing right now is in about 3 colors, red, green, and blue, and they don't really meet too often. I wish the copy were in better shape. But you get to see Ed Fury in it. He's not the star, but he is featured very prominently in the film.
Thank you again very much. Thanks to everybody who's going to tune in. If all goes well, this will be posted by midnight tonight. If not, it'll be
Wow.
posted by midnight tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thanks again, Brian and Greg. And to be continued on Thursday. The adventure continues. Good night, everybody.
Have a good evening, Hercules.
You too.